Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the Big Buzz Breakfast Club. These events are held on the second Thursday of each month in order to bring nonprofit professionals information that you need to manage your organizations more effectively, and we are so excited to have you with us today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and it will be shared with you via email post-event. Any questions that you have as we go throughout the presentation will be addressed at the end of the day today. So please do feel free to drop those in the Q&A box and we will address them when it is time for that portion of the event. And we are trying to make these recordings and presentations more accessible. So if you would like to turn off the closed captioning, please feel free to click the button at the bottom of the screen and select disable to turn that off today. Just a little bit about Big Buzz Idea Group for those of you who may not know us. But Big Buzz Idea Group has a mission to power nonprofit organizations to fuel positive change in the world. I was a past executive director, and in that time, I really was just decided that I was destined for a greater calling. I wanted to be able to serve more than one organization, and I wanted to be able to support all of the incredible leaders that are working in the nonprofit space, as I just continue to meet so many incredible people there. And so we are really excited to continue to try to help you elevate your organizations in a positive way to make a more powerful change in the world. We know that many nonprofit executives lack the time, staff, skills, and funding that they need. Big Buzz Idea Group fills gaps in management, marketing, and events so you can focus on the big picture and position your organization to thrive. And with that, today we are going to be talking about intentional culture creation for your nonprofit. I think that when I first started, I really did not know very much about culture, and a lot of people talk about culture in the corporate space, and we will focus on it in the corporate space today, but we're really going to dovetail and talk about how it weaves its way into the nonprofit world and how it can help you have a stronger organization. To start with today, we're going to do an introductory exercise. We're not going to do the sharing this morning, but I want you each to think about 3 times that you've been part of a team. When you think about teams, they can be anything from your workplace environment. It could be an event that you've worked on, a committee, even your board is a team that you interact with regularly. Could be your staff, that together you're a team. Could be intramural sports and an actual, sports team that you've been part of, or even your family. I know that we often think of our family as a team. We're all working together towards some common goals. But I would like you to just really take a moment, and I'm going to just pause for a second to let you think of 3 teams that you've been part of. And I would really then like you to think about if they were good teams or bad teams, and just what was the experience that you encountered. So we'll hit pause for just a moment. I want you to really visualize how the team performed. How did you feel being part of that team? And at the end of the day, were those teams successful in your eyes? As we think about this, it will help us set the framework for today. This is one of my favorite quotes. The strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team. I think that when we think about the qualities that maybe you experienced on those teams, the best teams are those that are better together. You play to one another's skills and strengths, and you really try to be stronger together, better together than you can be as individuals, more collaborative, more supportive. And so we're going to talk about all of those values and how to try to draw out more of that within your teams and your organizations today? Today's keywords, culture obviously is incredibly important. Culture is defined as the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterize an institution or organization. And we're also going to talk about co-creation, which is a management initiative that brings different parties together in order to jointly produce a mutually valued outcome. Zappos is known for making co-creation a popular turnkey phrase, and they really have done a lot of that within their organization. Today, we're going to talk about culture, and we're going to talk about how you can leverage the co-creation to continue to expand your culture and help you strengthen the groups that you are part of. It's important that you think about your particular organization as a standalone entity. There are a lot of cultures out there. And so you need to think about, what does your ideal culture look like and how do you start to define it? But it really comes down to values. Values are the cornerstone. They are the anchor of most culture, in my opinion. The values that your organization is committed to, what are you personally committed to? And then they start to bring everybody together with some shared values. You have to think about the values of your staff members, your committee members, your volunteers, your board. We have to really think about what does everybody hold near and dear? And even all the way through to your events. I think lots of times nonprofits get in the habit of having events because it's just what's always been done. A certain event may carry over from year to year without anybody really thinking twice of, does it serve our mission? Does it reinforce our values? Is it really part of the fabric of our organization? And so you want to start to look at things through a different lens. And it all starts with those values. Generally, you're going to have some things that you hold consistent with the other members of your organization. And so, there's so many incredible values that exist in the world today, but you have to really think about, what is your organization devoted to? And so I like this this image, as it does just share some of the different pieces. And not every culture is going to apply to every organization. Integrity is one that often will filter through an awful lot of organizations, but some, community may apply to some and not as much to others. It really depends a lot about what you're devoted to as an organization. And some organizations, I think in the healthcare or medical space, you may have much more professionalism, and those might be some expectations that you start to identify within your organization. But also thinking about other things, there are other organizations that are incredibly casual. When I think about our clients, we have an organization we work with that's devoted to suicide prevention, and they are far more casual and want to meet people where they are than some of the professional organizations that we meet with, who are really trying to bring, professional women together. And so they're just two very different organizations devoted to incredibly different things. And therefore their values, the core values that drive them, are very much unique to those organizations. And then once you do have your culture established and created, and you start to identify those values that you want to hold on to, you want to really make sure that you have a strategy and a structure in place to really elevate those values and to be able to broadcast them and share them out. And so we're going to talk about that today and what that looks like. I want to start with a video. And many people talk about Zappos, and Zappos is known for having a very unique culture. And so this particular video had a company that was interviewing them and talking a little bit about what makes them so unique and some of the things that they've done. And so I want to show this video, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more.
It is hot. It is hot here right now. Hey, what's going on? It's Chris from Wistia. Today we're going to be hanging out with Zappos to learn about how they've built an epic company culture that is the core driver of their business and how they've built this strong culture from the ground up.
Some companies talk about work-life separation or work-life balance, and for us, our approach is really to focus on work-life integration, because at the end of the day, it's just life.
The Zappos culture is unlike anything else I've ever seen. We joke that it's happier than Disney.
It's like a family, it's like this big family, and we're happy to see each other. We come to work, we enjoy it, and we have fun here.
Company culture is our main business strategy. It's the #1 priority of the company.
I think that we've always felt that competitors could copy our selection, they can copy our shipping, but one thing that could never be copied was our company culture.
From the very beginning, Fred and I interviewed every single person, but our criteria was really, would we want to go grab a drink with this person even if we weren't in business together? And if the answer was no, then we just wouldn't hire that person.
That's kind of the idea behind the way that we hire here, is it's more important that we're getting the right people, the people that are going to fit into our culture, that are going to appreciate our culture, help grow our culture.
Performance reviews include whether you're living or inspiring the core values in others, but what we found is it's much, much easier just to spend the extra effort on the front end, and sometimes that means it'll take twice as long to fill a position, but if you get the culture right, then most of the other stuff like delivering great customer service or building a long-term enduring brand or business will just be a natural byproduct of that.
How are you contributing to the culture? Are you going outside your department and making friends outside your department? These are things that you actually get scored on in order to get promoted.
When you grow like we've grown throughout the years and you have so many new employees, they're responsible for creating this culture, maintaining it, and making it better.
We're allowed to feel free to say, hey, you know it'd be fun if we all went for a hike? Cool, plan it, do it. That's something that they really stress too, is it's all up to everyone to scale this culture and to grow with the company as the company gets bigger.
You know, Tony and these guys figured out a long time ago that you actually can get your work done, be focused, but you can also, you know, be happy and have fun while you're doing that. I don't know, we're just happy to be here because we enjoy what we do. We enjoy each other too.
Zappos has a unique culture, and what's important is not that you have a Zappos culture, but that you have a set of core values and you define what your culture is.
So I love that video for a lot of different reasons. I think it really starts to pull in an image of what culture could look like. And I also think it's incredibly funny that I've heard people talk about they've seen the Zappos culture and they're like, I could never work there. That's just not who I am. That would not work for me. And Zappos actually takes it a step further. I was able to hear one of their core culture creators speak one time, and it was so interesting to listen to him talk because their training actually has all of the employees. If you want a position there, you have to spend 30 days going in. You have to be there at 7:30 in the morning. And if you arrive at 7:31, you lose the opportunity to become part of that team. So they really have this framework, and they have this structure of how they vet people and how they really look at who qualifies to be part of that team. And I think that when we think about culture, sometimes we're afraid to hurt people's feelings. Sometimes we may not, reinforce what we think within our day-to-day activities. And so really thinking about how culture weaves its way throughout your organization becomes incredibly important. It all starts with your mission and vision. They really do drive everything. And I think that it's, we're working with a client who, when they came to us, they talked about the fact that they felt very fractured within their organization. They felt like everybody was working in silos. They have a fair amount of staff, and then they have an even larger pool when they extend with their volunteers. And they felt like everybody was working independently and they weren't really a unified team, and that they just felt very fractured. And it was really interesting in spending some time. We did a huddle basically with the entire leadership team where everybody talked about the mission of the organization and really why the mission mattered to each one of them, and they shared with one another, that started to help them identify how they were all tied to that purpose. It was really incredibly important as they were coming out of some internal chaos within the organization. They needed to get realigned. And when you focus on that mission and what you are really committed to achieving, it starts to take out a lot of the extraneous, I think, chit chat or whispering and just some of those other things that sometimes happen in organizations and break down a positive culture. If you stay focused on why you're there and the good work that you are committed to doing, that drives your decisions, that drives your conversation, that drives how you interact with one another, and you just start to be a far stronger organization. After just taking that huddle of being able to talk with one another and understand why each one of them felt that their mission was important, they actually started to tear down the walls that separated them and understood better how each of their departments and each of their roles and responsibilities needed to work together more collaboratively to be able to achieve that mission at its highest level. It was a really beautiful exercise and experience. And I think that we undervalue the importance of looking at our mission. I don't know about all of you, but I know I've seen a couple of times where, maybe the board leadership starts to think that they want to tackle some certain initiative that maybe starts to move just a little bit off of your mission, or they think it's tied to the mission, or different leadership come in and kind of change your goals. But generally, in most organizations, you need to have a strategy. You need to know what you exist for, and you need to make sure that everything is vetted through that lens. I think the best boards are not ones that come in and try to change everything. They may try to improve upon things and how you're executing on your mission, but really, it should be more continuity and consistency, really, so that you can continue to create a larger impact. And when you have those important beliefs at the top, then the strategy and the structure, everything feeds into achieving that mission in a way that you're going to start to see far greater success. But I do think it has to be baked into your organization at all levels. It's really important that as a leader, that you are encouraging it with your staffs, you are encouraging it and revisiting it regularly with your volunteers, and especially with volunteers and or board members who maybe are a little bit more distant from your core mission. It's important to remember that they may have busy lives, and things that come very second nature to you might need some repeating within your, those spaces, as those people are not touching your organization nearly as frequently as you are. So they may need more constant reminders about that mission and vision and what your organization is dedicated to. Once you know who you are, it's incredibly important that you share who you are. And so, thinking about your shared values, right? Some organizations protect children, and that organically starts to magnetize to you other people who hold that as a high level value. It might be around education. It might be around healthy eating and nutrition. Perhaps your organization is trying to end poverty, lifting up women, or preventing suicide. Whatever your core mission is, it starts to set your culture right there and be a loudspeaker for others who value that same initiative in the same high level way that you do. Your organization's focal point is the first thing that unites you. And it's important to identify your values and communicate them in your speeches, through your social media, your management, in your meetings, especially board meetings, and making sure that that continues to be a driver that's being shared through your newsletter, your annual campaigns, and any other storytelling that you do. It's incredibly important that there should always be some thread of your values present so people can understand who you are. And the more that you really put out there who you are, the more you will organically attract those people who value those same things. And it will become very valuable all the way through. When people know what you stand for, it then starts to infiltrate your hiring, much like Zappos talked about. It'll also tap into your donations, your leading, both within the organization, your volunteers, and even attracting more volunteers to your organization who hold those same values, which then can even lead into stronger board development. So we really sometimes underestimate, I think, the value of culture and how deep it really runs within an organization. I love to be able to share this particular image. And so I don't know about all of you, but I grew up really being raised in a fixed mindset environment. I grew up in a day where, we were really expected to conform in school. We were all expected to fit in. We were all expected to follow the leader and really kind of just do the things that everybody else was doing, right? But I personally started to feel very, I often felt like a square peg in a round hole. It was not individualized. And I, over time, started to organically recognize and realize that I think every human being has incredible gifts and talents and unique skills and strengths. And I think that we are actually all beautiful just as we are. And I felt like the fixed mindset that I grew up in was trying to make me into something that maybe I really wasn't. And I didn't have the ability to freely embrace my own skills and strengths and to be able to expand on those. I think that the best cultures have this growth mindset. When we think about skills, right? Some people think you're born with it and it's fixed. It can't be changed. Whatever you got, that's all you get. You're set for life. But really, I think over time, right, there's a lot of hard work that can be done. There's a lot of ways that we can continue to learn and improve and look at mentorship and look at what we want to do, self-help books, self-help videos. I mean, over time, the amount of videos you can find on YouTube, I know a story of a woman who built a house from videos on YouTube. So I think that if you want to, there's not really anything that you can't do. And so instead of believing that you're limited, really realizing that the sky is the limit becomes incredibly important. When you talk about challenges, a fixed mindset looks at things to avoid. It looks at how, you might have a lack of something, which makes us all feel worse about ourselves. And you might just give up because you just feel like you can't do it. But with a growth mindset, when you embrace a challenge, you realize that maybe it's new, but maybe if you practice it or you exercise that muscle that maybe you haven't utilized before, that you're going to get better. And that with practice, you just get stronger and can perform better in that particular skill or talent. And I think that it's a real opportunity for growth. So I think it also allows us to be more persistent and continue to tackle new challenges, which is just, in my opinion, a better way to live, because I think every day gives us new challenges personally. And I think that we're constantly learning, constantly growing, and that fosters a better environment. When you think about effort, the fixed mindset would have told us that it's unnecessary. It's not, it's something you do when you're not good enough. I grew up often thinking I was not good enough. But the reality is that with your own individual gifts and strengths, every person in your organization, right, they have those gifts and strengths. They are unique and skilled and talented, and they should be enough just the way they are. The growth mindset really looks at effort as essential. We have to make an effort to really carry our own part of the load to really contribute to the larger initiative and the goals of the organization, and understand how we're going to more fully give in the gifts in the way that we can. And it's more of a path to mastery, really, again, knowing that we can learn many things if we put our minds to it, and that the sky is the limit based on our own personal choices. When it comes to feedback, the fixed mindset gets defensive. They take it personally. I worked in a very toxic environment for my first job out of college where everybody took everything personally. everybody was constantly attacking each other and everybody was an arm's length from each other. When you feel that cut down with feedback and the feedback's not constructive and it feels harsh and it feels like a judgment, then it really starts to distance you from the people around you. And it starts to really create a culture that's going to be a lot more toxic. But when you look at feedback as useful and you think about how you're delivering it, right? We've learned a lot about I statements and about books like Crucial Conversations that talk about how you can have more productive conversations. Even as a manager, I never had good managers. I had to really learn and work to identify how I could give better feedback and help people advance in the missions that they're serving so that they could flourish to be a stronger leader and be able to then guide those around them in that same way. Because we're all coming from a day in time when this growth mindset was not acknowledged, it was not valued, and it was not appreciated. So the more that I always think each one reach one, right? Like the more that I know better, the more I can teach others to also know this and share it in a way that we can continue to spread it and we can all do a lot better. But feedback is something to learn from, right? I love when people give me feedback and help me understand where maybe I made a mistake I had overlooked and how could I be stronger, or how could I have fixed this problem differently? And oftentimes there's not a single solution either. You know, I think that really looking at feedback and identifying multiple ways to find solutions can make a team and an organization far stronger as well. And then with that feedback, it helps us identify areas to improve. Again, when you're growing, I don't know if people have heard the story of Sarah Blakely, who founded the company Spanx, but her family actually talked about failures every night at dinner, which leads us into this setback concept at the bottom of this chart. But they would actually encourage, sharing of failures. At our company here, we've started doing on Fridays what we call something better. It is meant to be a way for our individual team members to talk about something that they did that they realized after the fact they could have done better. We sometimes will brainstorm other ideas if people feel stuck on, I don't know if there was a better way to do this, but I feel like maybe there was. Do any of you have ideas? And so it opens a different kind of conversation so that we all actually start to become elevated in our knowledge, in our ability to lead, and our ability to support one another when we understand more freely how people are thinking. And when you give that feedback and you do it from a place of support and kindness, you start to create more vulnerability within your team. And the more vulnerability and trust that you have within a team, the more you're going to actually accomplish and achieve, because people are not on guard and they're not so defensive. So it's a really beautiful gift. And then with setbacks, in the old days, I grew up where everybody wanted to point a finger. Everybody wanted to blame somebody and not themselves for something that happened. And people get discouraged. It's hard and it's disheartening. But in the ideal culture, really looking at that responsibility and taking that ownership of those mistakes that you make, I think is an incredibly valuable way to start to produce. And if you're a leader, show your own vulnerability, because as a leader, to create this framework and create a stronger culture in your company, your organization, you've got to really think about, setting the example and leading by example. So when you start to share how you made a mistake, how you wished you could do something better, or you ask your team for some feedback on a difficult situation, which is that co-creating that we talked about at the beginning, you start to actually strengthen your team and invite their opinions, let them know that their thoughts matter. And I think that nowadays with the growth mindset, then you use those learning moments as a wake-up call and how you can do better next time. I like the quote, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, right? I grew up with sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But almost every loss or every defeat, whether it, small, big, it doesn't really matter what the failure or the defeat might be, but it's a lesson. There are many lessons in there. And even as a parent, I talk to my children about what lessons did we learn from this, so that no matter what happens, we're always taking some knowledge forward. And I think with this growth mindset, one of the things I find incredibly helpful is that this allows us to all remember we're human. In my first stint as an executive director, it was not uncommon for me to feel like I had to be perfect all the time. I think that executive directors and nonprofit leaders, you are trying to please your donors. You are trying to lead your staff. You are trying to make sure, you are earning your board's respect and working professionally with them. You have your sponsors, your outside constituents, you have your clients, and all of these different circles that you touch. And so you feel like you have to be on for every single one of them. But with this growth mindset, I think it allows us to also hold space for the fact that we're all human. We can't be perfect, and perfection is an unrealistic expectation. So I hope that as you consider how you might change or what you might tweak in your nonprofit to create a stronger culture, that you think about how you can give your own staff, your own team, and yourself some space and grace to also be human. As you start to develop those people around you, whether they be volunteers or staff, I love to focus on this quote by Mother Teresa. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. As you do identify what your organization stands for, and you actually start to think about and get your staff involved in how they're actually affecting change for your organization, sometimes you may have to help them understand how their piece actually touches the bigger impact. Because at the end of the day, the best cultures are those where your employees, your volunteers, your board members all feel like their work is meaningfully contributing to the goals that you are trying to accomplish. They come because of your mission, but then you have to help to groom them and educate them and guide them in a way that they can understand what impact that they may be having on the goals and initiatives of the organization, and then also sharing and telling that story frequently of how your organization is meeting the need that you exist to serve. Incredibly important and often overlooked is that extra level of communication. Sometimes as nonprofit leaders, we're so tied to it and thinking about it day in and day out, week in and week out, that we forget that other people need to be reminded frequently about this piece so that they stay connected to your organization and feel like they are part of the team and part of the solution you are trying to create. Values drive behaviors. So you want to find people with strong values. You want to be clear about the values. You want to document those values, and you want to share them and reinforce them. And I think that this becomes really important when you are interviewing. It really should start whether you are interviewing for staff or you are interviewing for board. When you are talking to your volunteers, the more that you can start to ask questions around values and be open-ended. Don't tell them upfront what your values are. Perhaps they've done their research. Hopefully you've been sharing what your values as an organization might be, and that will help them understand you better. Because if you put it out there, you start to, again, magnetize those who hold those same things in check. But then when you're interviewing, ask the questions. Can you give me an example of a time when your values were challenged? And what did you do? What values are important to you? How do you exercise your values on a regular basis? It really becomes incredibly important. And I think we have to think about the example that we set. I can go back to a few times, and we're going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to share with you the example of Big Buzz and how we created many of our values and went through this process, because I think it helps illustrate many of these points. But I remember a particular situation where integrity is a value we hold near and dear at Big Buzz. As an executive director, I watched several organizations actually be taken advantage of by other companies, and I felt that they had been really just taken advantage of and almost stolen from, if you will. And so integrity is something that I hold incredibly close in my heart. And It is one of our largest pillars of what our company is devoted to, especially in the nonprofit space. And we had a project where we had some interns with us that we had brought on for one summer of work. And we had a situation where several of us observed a client making many bad decisions. They were not making ethical decisions that were in alignment with our values. And we had to call them out. We had to hold them accountable. We had to have difficult conversations, because when a lot of the, I think the toxicity starts to spring in an organization is when those conversations are not held directly, but when they start to become behind closed doors, they become whispers at the water cooler, or they become too many side conversations rather than direct conversations. And so we really had to look at who we were as an organization, and we had to call out this particular member of our client, because, you know, many people come to nonprofits with the best of intentions, but occasionally they too make bad choices. And to live within our own set of values, we had to address it, and we had to call it out. We ended up putting it on the line, and we've done this a few times where we actually do look at whether an organization is a good cultural fit for us. And if they're not, then we actually will not work with them as a client, because we want to make sure that we are working with organizations who also have our values and work from a high level of integrity. So you've got to really think about how that filters throughout your organization, how you can bring it into hiring, even your board interviews, volunteer interviews, and make sure that it's permeating your organization from the top down, from the inside out, so that it's always very present. I want to use the example of Big Buzz today to help illustrate a few points of how we went through this process. And I think it's really important that, you know, our mission, again, is to power nonprofit organizations to fuel positive change in the world. So it's incredibly important for us that that is our starting point. We are trying to look for organizations that really do want to make a difference. Hopefully, you know, again, some of our clients are empowering women. We are working with people in the mental illness space. We are working with clients who are building strong communities and supporting local businesses. As a small business owner myself, that's incredibly important to me. We constantly want to support children. You know, I think there are a lot of organizations out there, and personally, I view children as incredibly innocent and often needing structure and support, because to keep them on the straight and narrow, and if they are born into bad circumstances or whatever that case might be, how can you support them and give them a better chance? How can you feed the hungry? So all of those things really, you know, spreading education, right? I think when we talk about some of the cycle of poverty and some of those pieces, you've got to break that cycle. And that starts with education and making certain things more accessible to more people. So our goal is to really find those organizations who are making an incredible difference and continue to try to serve them the best that we can. Once we were clear on what our vision and mission was, then we created these "we believe" statements. And I think they're really powerful. We have them on our website. We often put them on our social media and share them regularly, because at the end of the day, again, you know, we believe that the best long-term relationships are based on honesty, integrity, and 100% transparency. I've seen organizations work with nonprofits where they're not 100% transparent. They're not fully honest. And so that is a value that is of the utmost importance to us. And it's important that we let people know that. We believe nonprofit organizations make the world a better place. So we continue to want to find those organizations doing good work and continue to support them, as I've said over and over this morning. We believe that everyone should be part of a team that inspires them daily. It's really important to us that we are not in this alone. We're better together. So we want to have a good team. We want to have people who value team. Our team has to work independently on many occasions, but at the end of the day, they have to understand they are part of something bigger than themselves, and they have to know that that contribution matters. So this is another value for us. We believe it's an honor to partner and serve growing nonprofits. Again, we want those organizations who are focused on growth. We've got some nonprofits we've met, they want to just keep doing what they've always done, and that's always okay. But we really want organizations that want to continue to grow and think differently and improve and serve more people and increase their impact. And we believe there are ways to do that. So we like to be really part of that growth and finding those opportunities and supporting our clients and making those things become a reality. And then we believe that life is better when you laugh daily. We spend a lot of time invested in our projects, our business, our clients. But at Big Buzz, it's really incredibly important that we enjoy the work we're doing and we bring some fun to all of this hard work too, right? Because I think we've all seen or maybe experienced over time nonprofits that, it just feels like an albatross. There's so much work. And because people are not always swimming in the same direction, it's stressful and it's hard. And you've got to have that laughter to bring the levity and continue to make it fun and more supportive of one another. Once you know what your values are and you know how you hold them, then I think you also have to continue to evaluate against them. And so again, the pillars for our company are integrity, which we've talked about, growth, we've talked about a couple of times. Gratitude is a big one for us at Big Buzz. We've had some clients where sometimes we just feel like the servants. We've felt like doormats. And it's really important that we want gratitude, not just for us. We want it for the leaders we're working with. We want your boards to show gratitude for you. We want the people you're serving to have gratitude for the work you're doing. And we think gratitude continues to be one of the most important values out there, because at the end of the day, we all, again, want to know we're doing something worthwhile and meaningful. And most of us in this nonprofit space are devoting a lot of time, energy, and effort to make good things happen. We just want to know that somebody sees that and feel recognized. So gratitude remains really strong on our list of values. Teamwork, we've talked about. We believe in teamwork, not only internally. All of these values are things that we want for our clients, we want for our team members as individuals, and we also want for ourselves as a company. We want profitability for all of you. We want to see you expand your funding and your resources, because when you have more money, you can do more work. And we really want all of us to continue to succeed around these 5 pillars. And so again, we do evaluate against this. We start with the interview process, and we have several people do interviews. We don't really, sometimes you have to ask the questions differently. Sometimes you need to have different perspective, have others be able to rephrase certain things. And each one of us hear different things when we're talking to, I think, candidates, whether they be for board, staff, volunteer initiatives. And so really taking the time to do that work. Zappos, they talked about it, right? They all hired. They wanted their people at the end of the day to be somebody they would be willing to go have a beer with after work. That may not be the evaluation tool that everybody uses, but really thinking about how you ask questions to identify if they're a good fit for you. There are other things that did not make this particular core list of 5 for us here, but one of the other things about our team, most of us, we really all value family. And so we give a lot to our company, but we have a firm understanding as well that within our organization, it's family first. And so if there is something that needs to be tended to on the home front with our parents, with our children, with a spouse, those things really matter. And we give the space to support one another to do that. So looking at what those values are, asking the right questions, and creating a list that helps you evaluate if people fit into your culture appropriately becomes really important as you try to create a more positive culture for your organization. I would like to, as we move into the question and answer session, I would like to talk a little bit more first about characteristics of successful cultures, but the Q&A is coming up. So please do put your questions into the Q&A box, and we will be addressing them shortly. But characteristics of successful cultures include, again, being purpose-driven. The more that you are clear on that mission, I think about that first company that I talked about where there was so much toxicity. I can think about nonprofits I've seen where there was so much toxicity. They were focused on their individual roles or their individual egos, and they weren't focused on that mission and the purpose of the organization. When you put that other stuff aside and you keep talking about this is our mission, how can we fulfill this mission? How do we serve this mission as a group? You help redirect people's energy to that core initiative. And the more that you continue to talk about that, then all of the other side conversations and the bickering and the behind the scenes details start to actually fall by the wayside. Part of this becomes effective communication. I also think that you have to really, as you are having those conversations, you have to know that you may have to have some difficult conversations, right? I call them courageous conversations these days. That's a phrase that Brene Brown has talked about a lot around courageous conversations, but it is sometimes challenging the norm. It is asking questions that may seem a little bit, maybe like a naysayer or maybe like the devil's advocate, but sometimes you have to be willing to be vulnerable and ask those questions, because at the end of the day, if you can take an idea and you can vet out why it might not work on the front end, you can create a stronger, better solution on the back end. And so that requires having these conversations around these ideas. Being purpose-driven, the best teams, when they have these courageous conversations, you talk about what's best for the organization, put all of the ideas on the table, and then agree that even if your idea is not chosen when you walk away from that conversation, that you all are there for that same purpose. And hopefully you will all agree that this is the best solution for your organization at that moment in time. And you all have to also allow the space and grace for that to maybe change. And that comes into this feedback. You need to give feedback. You need to give feedback to your board, to your volunteers, to your staff. You need to give feedback in the evaluation of ideas and programs. What maybe isn't working the way you thought? Don't just set it and forget it, but have a process for reevaluating. And maybe sometimes with your staff, when we talk about those individual skills and strengths, I think it becomes important too to realize and recognize that sometimes on your team, you may have somebody in a wrong seat on the bus. You've probably heard that phrase. And so sometimes, when you think about their skills and strengths and you think about what your organization needs, you might find a place where there's a better fit within your organization. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's not the right fit. When you're clear on your culture, you also might make some bad decisions. And so it's important to give that feedback to those people, continue to try to help them get adjusted. But if it's not the right fit, then you may need to liberate those people back into the workforce or even the volunteer pool if it's just not working for your organization with your values. Successful cultures continue to embrace diversity. Again, the diversity of thinking, and diversity comes in a lot of different sizes, shapes, and forms. It's not just about race and religion or gender. It's also about size of business. It's also about, age demographics and just community-based, different parts of your neighborhood or the regions that you serve, and really trying to make sure that you're inviting people to offer different perspectives through their lens, which again, if you can have those discussions as you're thinking about new concepts and new ideas, then you're also going to be able to, again, just have a better solution when you launch and make sure you've thought about as many things as possible. Successful cultures have teamwork. It is a collaborative initiative. You've got to have strong leadership. You have to hold one another accountable and have methods to do that. It's got to be okay to call one another out, to say like, hey, you said or did this, and I don't think that aligns with our culture. There's been times again, we're all human, and we've had to, within our company, within our clients, we've had to tap people on the shoulder and say, hey, we saw that and we don't think that's okay. The example that I referenced earlier, where we had a client who was doing a lot of unethical things, we really had to hold the client accountable and it was wonderful that the organization collectively heard what we were saying and responded in a very positive manner so that we were able to protect and insulate that organization and continue the good work that they're doing and continue our relationship with them. So, I think it continues to be holding people accountable is just such an important part of this teamwork concept. And then engagement and loyalty come in these successful cultures. Again, when people feel like they're part of that experience and that success, they're going to feel proud to be part of your organization. They're going to want to remain engaged, and they may even come up from a committee member to a committee chair to a board member, and maybe help open incredible donor doors that are become incredibly meaningful for you. And then obviously successful cultures allow for that growth and development. I think there are ways that even if you have a small staff, you can continue to invest in that personal growth and development to encourage your team members to become better, to allow them to grow personally. Because when we're not growing, then things get stale. If we're just doing the same things over and over, things get old and we often lose people along the way. But when you can find out and take the time to know what matters to the individuals you're working with, then you can propose, perhaps it's a book, perhaps it's an online class. These days, through the last 18 months, there's been an incredible amount of free resources out there as well. And even programs like the Big Buzz Breakfast Club that, again, they're meant for nonprofit leaders to be able to come for free and get information that will help them be better leaders. And so finding those places and where you can help connect the resources about with the people who are looking for them, and then that makes you a conduit for that, and that's going to continue to show that you care about the people on your team, and that's going to make you have a more positive culture in the long run too. So I know that this is a lot to take in, but I would love to open it up for questions and answers at this time. If you do have any questions about culture or any specific situations within your organization where perhaps you don't know how you would have addressed something or would like to know more about how you could address it. And I do think that culture continues to be something that is just really important for it in and of itself continues to evolve, and it's even harder in this virtual environment. One of the things that we've talked about is a lot of people, the value of team meetings. I think they become incredibly important in building that cohesiveness and reinforcing that team connectivity, and also that you are all connected to that one mission, but understanding what everyone's doing and how those pieces filter in. I think that's really important in a regular environment, but now that so many of us are virtual and we have been for so long, making sure you're having those check-ins becomes even more important. So I encourage people to also continue to think about that. It seems as though we're not having any questions come in. I'll take a couple of minutes to just talk about some additional resources. If you're not already receiving our newsletter, I would invite you to sign up for that and connect with us on social media. We are continuing to just try to share our lessons along the way. We have been in business for 17 years. I've been a nonprofit executive director 2 different times, collectively 9 years. I've served on nonprofit boards and simply want to continue to share the resources and the lessons with more of the nonprofit community to help you do more with less. When I started out, I was a staff of 1. I didn't know where to find resources. I didn't know what existed out there. And so we really like to make connections and help people find those resources, which is part of why we created this breakfast club. We also, next week on the 3rd Thursday of the month, we have a roundtable. It is $10 to participate in that roundtable, but it has a much smaller group that can participate in it. And it is really a method for being able to have you ask your specific questions, talk about how we can help you at your organization develop around the topic of the month. And so next week we'll be talking about company culture. nonprofit culture and how it applies to you. I often talk about companies in a way that I think nonprofit organizations are companies, but you have a nonprofit status. And so I think many things that apply to the corporate world also do apply to you, and use those words interchangeably. But we will do a deeper dive into your personal needs, questions, thoughts, and things that you would like to share ideas with. And I will address them directly. And then we also have the Power Cells, which we've launched a year ago. We found that nonprofit leaders need to connect with more nonprofit leaders. So our Power Cell program allows for 3 people to come together at the same day and time each month as determined by the group, to just be able to group think your problems. It allows you to bounce ideas off of one another. Oftentimes people learn about their own problem, but then they learn from the problems of the other executive directors. It's not a gripe session. It's really a positive, constructive place where you can be yourself, and you don't have to put on all of those, the forward facing, perfect, situation that you do when you're dealing with all of the constituencies you serve. But rather, this is a safe space where you can talk peer to peer and really share your challenges and identify some solutions to help you resolve them. And then for other people, we are also offering consultation where we can do one-on-one deep dives with you, be available to you, and work with you on a regular basis. We are doing coaching for a couple of organizations just to be able to help them continue to understand how they can level up in their nonprofit work. And right now, I will mention as well that Big Buzz is hiring. If you happen to have know people who like to serve in the nonprofit space and that is their passion, we are hiring for many positions at this time and looking to add, more key players devoted to the nonprofit space to our team. So I would encourage you to check out our Join the Team link at our website at bigbuzzideagroup.com. Next week, and thank you, Brad, for also putting that in the chat. Again, really encourage you all to connect with us there. Next month's Breakfast Club will talk about hiring. We know that many nonprofits are also trying to hire and grow your teams. And so the theme will be how to hire and keep your next great employee. And we hope that you will join us then. And if there are still no questions, that will bring today's Breakfast Club to a conclusion. I hope that you'll stay connected with us, and I wish you all a fabulous day. Thank you for joining us.